Hey, so this is the Drunkalogs, a podcast about addiction and recovery in which each guest shares their version of how it was, what happened, and how it is now, and then endures a half-hour Q&A at the hands of your host, Nick Morton. My next guest was born and raised in Detroit, where she discovered drinking and drugs at a very early age and eventually gravitated toward bartending, before becoming a very successful mixologist at high-end restaurants here in Los Angeles, where her drinking found an environment to thrive. But a DUI, a car crash, and a pyrotechnics catastrophe drove her reluctantly into recovery, where she struggled for years before a sponsor helped her discover the power of the present and meditation as a conduit to God. She now runs a nonprofit, Worthy Beyond Purpose, that focuses on teaching meditation to kids and has traveled the world sharing her practices and techniques. Won't you please welcome Connie Clotworthy.
You want me just to dive right in?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. So born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. My biological father left when I was very young, leaving my mom to raise two small kids on her own, which she worked full time, which meant that we kind of had a revolving door at my house, meaning that we had different families that lived in the basement. We had different people staying. We had different people helping her. We had different people caring for us, me and my brother. And what that brought was 50 different forms of abuse. And I don't say that because it's not why I drank, but I say that because for as long as I can remember, I wanted to change the way that I felt, 100%, from a very young age. And I used to pull my eyelashes because I wanted to change the way I felt. I used to hide food under the bed and eat and hide the evidence because I wanted to change the way I felt. And then I found alcohol. And I didn't have an experience with alcohol where I remember the first drink and I was like, oh, I'm pretty now, or oh, I'm funny now, or oh, I can talk to the boys now. That was not my experience.
Right.
What I remember about alcohol was sneaking out of my mom's house when I was like 15, went to a party, got annihilated, like blackout drunk. I don't remember anything of the party. I don't remember the feelings. I don't remember any of that. What I remember is sneaking back in and getting caught. And my mom yelling at me, like pulling me up the stairs and like screaming at me. And both of my grandparents died of this disease. And I remember her saying to me, like, do you want to end up like your grandma? And I remember sitting in this chair and looking at her and just thinking to myself, you see me now? You see me now? And it was like that defiance, that complete, like, no fucks given. That was my first drug of choice. That was my first addiction. And that's how my drinking went from that moment on, it was never to just have a good time. It was always to drink as much as I could, cause as much damage as I could, no fucks given, like from day one.
And is that like for the attention?
I think, like I said, there was a lot, there was some abuse growing up because my mom was working so much. So I feel like for me, I wasn't being seen.
Yeah.
Like, how could she not see me? So that was something that she saw.
Right. Like, here I am. Deal with this.
Here I am. Yeah. I guess it was for the attention. I actually never heard it put that way, but I guess it was for that reason.
I mean, I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but just the idea of like, not being made a priority. It's like, oh, the children will take care of themselves or someone else will take care of them. And like, here's a way of being like, I exist, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't need anybody. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's how it went from 15. And then by the time out of high school, I had been arrested half a dozen times. I had my appendix burst and I didn't go to the hospital for 3 days because I'd taken so much ecstasy. I didn't feel it. I got arrested at the Detroit airport. I used to fly. I flew to Florida and got some drugs and flew back into Detroit. This is before 9/11 when it was much easier to do that.
Sure.
This is all by 19.
Right.
So probably some dings should have went off if there was a problem by that point, but not at all. So
and there really wasn't like when you say things should have gone off, like in your mind to be like, I got a problem, like I keep getting arrested, like this is a problem, but it doesn't feel that way because why do you think? Like,
because I just didn't care. Because literally, like I didn't care. I didn't care who I hurt, what I did, if I hurt myself. I didn't, like, there was no feeling around any of that. It was
and
just
are you
what
getting
was
arrested
happening.
for disorderly or like drug possession, or it's a mix of stuff?
A mix of stuff. I had some shoplifting, I had some fighting, I had some breaking and
Right.
entering. Yeah,
Right.
pretty much
Right.
a
Right.
mix of stuff. I was all over the board. So then after that airport arrest, I wasn't allowed to stay at my parents' house for a while. There was a lot of drugs that were confiscated in that, and it
Right.
just wasn't safe. I had a little brother, and it
Hmm.
just wasn't safe. So I had
Right.
to make some money quickly, and I had to
Wasn't
figure
safe
some
because
stuff
the
out.
people who had whose drugs they belonged to were like, where's our stuff?
Yeah, I didn't have an experience with that, but the DEA had
Right.
acknowledged that. Yeah.
Right.
So I had to make some money quickly and figure it out. And what that looked like for me was I went into bartending,
Right.
and it was love at first sight. It was, I was getting paid to drink and make drinks and be out all night and party. And it was amazing. It was amazing. It was everything I ever wanted. And it was a beautiful experience, and it went on for many, many years. And what this
I
looked
bet you
like,
were like the dream bartender, the kind of bartender where like I sit down and I can like tell you my story and you'll fucking listen and make me think you care, because I think you probably do care.
I was that person in my 30s. I was not that person in my early 20s. In the beginning, it was just like, make as many drinks as you can. I didn't really want to talk to too many people because I was drinking, because
Right.
I was getting so wasted.
Right. Right.
So what it looked like at the end of my Michigan career was, I'd go to work at 5 p.m. and I would work till 2 in the morning, 2, 3 in the morning. And then we'd go out and party all night long till like 6 in the morning. And then I'd come home and crash for a couple hours, wake up, eat a cheeseburger, repeat.
Right.
Right? Like, that was life for years.
And was it working?
It was working. Like, I was just
Right.
gonna say, like, that was fun. That was fun
Right.
for me.
Yeah.
And then, like, on a day off, me and my friends would go sit in a bar from the time they opened till the time they closed and like play Mega Touch. It's
Right.
just like what we did. And that was so fun. And then I pulled my first geographic, which I didn't know at the time. I had a friend who wanted to take a cross-country trip to LA from Detroit. And I was 27 at the time. And I was like, yeah. So we did what anybody would do. We packed up the car, and Thelma and Louise meets Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Right.
And we hit the road. And it was an amazing trip. It was supposed to be 2 weeks long. And by the time I got to LA, I stayed at the hostel in Venice, right on the boardwalk there.
Right.
And I just saw things that I wasn't seeing living in this lifestyle in Detroit, which was like sunshine, ocean, people doing yoga, people taking their dogs for walks, drum circles, daylight,
Yeah.
And I just had this awakening, and it was interesting. There's a woman walking her dog, and I had the thought, like, people actually live here in this magical place.
Right.
This isn't just where people come for vacation. Like, people live here. And so we ended up staying quite a while at the hostel. We kept checking out and checking back in, checking out and checking back in. And finally I was like, this is it. This is where I'm going to change my life. This is where I'm going to get out of the bar scene. I'm going to become a writer. I'm going to go to the drum circle every day, and I'm going to change my life.
Right.
So I went back to Michigan. I packed up my car, grabbed my dog, and came back out. So, at 27, I had these big ideas, was going to start my life over. But again, like, how do you meet people at 27? And the only thing is bars and party scenes. So I immediately, everything I was doing in Michigan, I started to do in LA, immediately, but just put a little more shine on it, like we do in LA. Everything's just a little bit shinier. Which what I mean by that was the raves I was going to in Detroit became Burning Man in California. the dark, dirty bars I was working at in Detroit I became a mixologist in California.
Right.
Which meant I got to create cocktail programs for you,
Right.
and it was amazing.
Where were you working?
I've worked in many, many places.
Right.
I worked my last 8 years at a place called Manhattan Beach Post. Which they're so lovely. I absolutely adore them. Today, they've seen me through it all and stuck with me to the end.
Wow.
So they're
cool.
amazing. Yeah, they're an amazing group, an amazing family.
Right.
But that's where things started to go really downhill again. And so I'm in LA. I'm a mixologist where places are hiring me to create cocktail programs for them.
Right.
And I have this job that's an amazing job where I get to do mixology for them.
Right.
And I have my own apartment. I have a little guest house because I'm making great money. I live alone in South Bay. I have a great car. I've been a Burning Man 7 years. I have this huge community. We throw fundraisers. We throw parties. Everybody knows who I am, right? Like, I've made it. I've arrived. My life is amazing. And this is it. Everybody wants to be me, right? So everything's great. And it was great until it stopped working.
Right.
And when it stopped working real fast. Like I told you, between 15 and 18 was like arrest, drug felony, almost die because your appendix burst. All of those things happen in this amount of time. My last year of drinking was, I got a DUI leaving work. I blew a .24. Wow. And I'm in full uniform, like just leaving work.
Right.
Crazy. And the cop was like, he gave me 3 breathalyzers, and he's like, he doesn't understand. And I'm like, if you take me to jail, you don't respect my job.
Right.
Right. And he's like, if I don't take you to jail, you don't respect my job.
Right.
And how are we having this conversation? And so I go to jail. And then like 3 days later, I total my car. Oh. And that's because it's raining. It has nothing to do with the fact that I've been drinking all day, right? It's raining. I have bad tires.
Wow.
And then like 4 days after that, I light myself on fire.
That's usually the sequence of events: arrest, car crash, self-immolation.
Yes. So I became a fire dancer in my Burning Man career.
Oh, really?
And bartender, fire dancer. It was a really great combination. And what happened was I had a day off work, which I was like, I'm going to clean my house all day, which meant getting some outside substance. And cleaning my house, which actually meant like destroying my house, right? Taking everything out of the closets and then getting gapped and not being able to put anything back.
Right.
So a whole day of that. And I decided it's a good day to practice some fire dancing. And so I'd been drinking and partying all day by myself, mind you. Right. No problem. This is just Tuesday.
Right.
And I go outside, and at this point, my boyfriend at the time had come over, and so I'm doing my fire stuff, and I light myself on fire.
And when you say doing your fire stuff, you're spinning like lit like stuff.
So my tools at the time were fans, fans. So there's like wicks at the end of them.
Right. Oh, yeah. I've seen that.
And you spin them. Yep, exactly. And you spin them.
It's like a cat o' nine tails kind of vibe. Right.
Yes, totally.
What's in those cups at the end of them? The fire at the what lights that on
fire?
So
there's wicks. There's wicks at the end of them.
Right.
And you dip the wicks. And this is interesting you asked this, because what happens is you dip the wicks and then you shake it off as much as you can.
Right.
And then you light them and then you dance. Right. And for me, what happened was I didn't have that much fuel left. So I dipped them as much as I could, and then I didn't shake them off because I didn't have that much fuel.
Right.
So then when I lift them up to light them, the fuel comes down.
Ooh, oh my God.
Yeah. So I'm in shock at the time, it didn't last very long, but I'm in shock and on fire. And my boyfriend at the time is scream, like he's like, drop him. And I can't. So he has to like karate chop them out of my hands. And then I'm like realizing what happened. And I go and I run and my arms are under the sink and I'm screaming bloody murder. And what I do is I finish the cocaine because you don't know the kind of pain I'm in, right?
Sure.
Like this is too much pain. So my roommate came running from down the street. He was at a friend's house. He heard me screaming from down the street.
Wow.
And he came running and he comes running in the house and my arms are under the sink and I'm doing cocaine.
Right.
And he like, what does that do to a person, who watches that? And he was just like, are you kidding me right now? Like, what is it? You need to get to a hospital. You need to get to a hospital. So that ends up leaving me in the burn unit ICU for 9 days.
No way. Wow.
Yeah, that's what happens to me. That's this.
Oh, yeah.
Well, marks here.
I was going to ask, but then I was like, oh, that's maybe rude and weird. Yeah, that's intense.
This is the pause button, by the way, because sometimes you got to pause. I have a tattoo for those who
maybe I need that.
Those who can't see, I have a pause button tattooed on my wrist. Yes.
That's amazing.
So while I'm in the burn unit ICU for 9 days, mind you, this is all within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
What I do in the burn unit ICU is I have somebody sneak me in vodka because you don't know the kind of pain I'm in. It's not enough what they're giving me here. It's not enough. I need more. And so I get out of that and now I'm just, a total wreck if I wasn't already before, because now I'm on tons of painkillers and I'm still drinking. And I don't have a car, and I'm not working because of my arm, and I'm just a total disaster. And my parents want me to come home for Christmas this year, so I do. I go back to Michigan, total wreck. And it was one day I wake up one morning next to my bottle of Johnny Walker because that was my husband for a long time.
Sure.
And I take a couple swigs and I start crawling down the stairs. And I hear my brother and my sister-in-law are talking. And my niece, who is my favorite person in the world, she's tattooed on the other arm.
Nice.
Really quick. And she was my higher power until I realized that she couldn't be.
Right.
And so it was, I wake up, I take a couple pulls, I'm crawling down the stairs. My brother and my sister-in-law are talking about who's going to watch my niece this day. And my sister-in-law is like, it's Connie's day to watch her. It's your sister's day. My brother says, I don't know who the fuck that is in there. It is not my sister, and she's not watching my daughter.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I'm like, sweet, I don't have to babysit. Right?
Right.
And I crawl back up the stairs, and I take a couple more pulls, and I fall back asleep. No problem. And then I go home, I go back to LA. And at this point, I was seeing doctors, mostly because of my arm, but I stopped processing food. Like food was just flying right through me. I was getting no nutrients from food. I was losing teeth like all the time.
Wow.
Like people would stop the party and look for my teeth. Like this was a thing. This is who I was. Like Connie lost another tooth. Everybody stopped the music. Look for Connie's tooth. Like it was crazy. And this is just who I was. Like it was no big deal, And my mom sends me pictures from Christmas, and I'm looking at these pictures, and I don't recognize anything in the pictures, like anything that, and I mostly don't recognize myself. I'm like, who is that? Because at this point I'm bloated and I'm just disgusting. And that's when I remembered the conversation with my brother and my sister-in-law. And that's when I remembered my mom being like, do you want to end up like your grandma? And I loved my grandma, but my grandma was the fall down drunk over Christmas that would pee herself. Everybody would have a good laugh and put her in the next room.
Right.
For years. And I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be that for my niece. And so I knew that was kind of the first eye opener of everything has to change.
Right.
And I'm on a court card because I got a DUI. Right. So I don't even know, what to do with this court card. There's a suggestion of how you handle this from the court, so I do my research and I try to figure out where to go. And luckily enough, there was this program right down the street from my house. And I'm like, I'll try to figure this thing out. I guess I'll go. I have to go.
Yeah.
So I can't drive. I don't have a car. It's totaled. I can barely put a sentence together. My arm is bandaged up. I'm just, like this blob. And I walk in, and it's this place called Unurban on Pico. And I live down the street. So I walk in, it's a coffee house.
Yeah.
And I walk in, and it's packed.
Right.
With happy, joyous, and free.
Right.
And I walk in, and I'm like, fuck no.
Really?
Right? Grossed out by happy, joyous, and free at this point. And I turn around to walk out, and I was like, there's no way in hell can I do that. And as I walk out, this 6'5" giant walks in, literally I walk out, he walks in, swoops me around. And he's like, Connie. And I look up, and I was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? Getting coffee? He's like, no, I'm speaking. And this was this dude I used to rage with, hardcore rage with back in crazy. And I was like, you're speaking at this thing? And he was like, yeah. And he's like, why don't you hang out and listen? And I was like, this is going to be hilarious. Right.
Right.
And I have to tell you, first, God shot, if it hadn't been that guy, that moment, that day, that very second, I don't know that I would be here today.
That's wild.
It's so wild. And then, so I walk, I kind of stand in the back. So there's no seats. It's standing room only. Yeah. It's packed. And he takes the stage, and he does his speech, and he takes his 9-month chip that day.
Wow.
And I just watch him with this light, and he's funny, and people are laughing. He's having a good time, and he's comfortable in his skin. And I'm just like, wow. And then he gets done, and I get ready to sneak out. And he's like, hey, newcomer in the back, wait for me. I want to talk to you.
Wow.
Which then gave everybody else the right to talk to me, right?
That's
newcomer.
Amazing. Right.
So everybody's like, here's my number. Call me, Right. I'm like, never, not a fucking chance. I will never call you. I'm going to get coffee with you. What would we ever talk about? I don't understand what you people do.
Right.
So I waited for my friend, and we went, and I think we had lunch after, and he just talked to me about this program. And
do you remember his share from that day?
I don't. I really just remember, I actually don't remember anything anybody said that day. Right, I just remember watching him be comfortable.
Yeah.
And free, and this light in his eye. And I was like, how are you doing that?
Yeah. What's
I've
that
never
all
had
about?
that.
Yeah.
Since I can remember, I tried to change the way I felt,
Right.
So what is this? And so he told me about the program, and I was like, well, that's great for you. I'm glad that works for you, but that will never work for me. And he was like, I'll pick you up tomorrow. And I'm like, no. And he's like, what are you going to do? You don't have a job. You don't have a car. You don't have friends. You don't have, you have a card you have to fill. And I was like, all right, I'll do this. That was the beginning. That definitely, there was a lot.
How long ago was that?
So that was, I have 4.5 years now.
Right.
So that was 6.5 years. So I had 2 years of trying to do it my way.
Right. Oh, interesting.
And why that was the case was I knew I couldn't drink anymore, right? Drinking, I knew that had me beat, but sober wasn't going to be it for me, because you don't know what I've been through. You don't know how I feel. You don't have this life. If you had this life, you would too, and I had that mentality of, I can't. Sober just wasn't even a thought, it wasn't even it could never happen.
Yeah, sure.
So I spent the 2 years of watching everybody have this light and this thing and this glow. And I got the sponsor and worked the steps and got the commitments and did the things. And I kept going out and kept going out and kept going out and kept going out. And I was just like,
and when you go out, you would go out with pot or Coke or...
Well, I worked my way down the list. Maybe I could just do a little cocaine.
Right.
No such thing, right? Maybe I could just do, especially not drink. Come on. Maybe I can just do a little bit of ketamine. Maybe I can just do a little bit. I don't want everything.
Yeah,
maybe totally. I can just do a little bit. And so what my final drink was maybe I can just take this half an Adderall.
Right.
I'd worked my way all the way through everything to this half an Adderall because it's a prescribed drug. It's not even a drug. It's not prescribed to me, but it's a prescribed drug. So I'm just going to take this half an Adderall. And I was going out with my girlfriends for Labor Day, and I was the designated driver. And everybody knew I was in the program. Everybody knew I was doing pretty good. So I was a designated driver. I take my half an Adderall and don't tell anybody. And I wake up the next morning out of a blackout in my room, face down, and I jump up and I'm like, holy shit, like, where's my car? And I go running outside and my car is there. And then I come in and I'm like trying to piece it together. And I have to call one of my girlfriends and I'm like, yo, like, who drove last night? And she's like, what do you mean you drove? Because that's the kind of drinker I was, right? Like, you wouldn't even know. Like, there was this mask that was on, you know? And I could fully function in a blackout and nobody would even know. And this is what I did bartending for many years.
That's like why the cop is like, you can't possibly be 0.24.
Right. Totally. And I'm just like, of course, you know, like you're wrong. This is my job. This is what I do for a living. So I had to have all of that happen to.
Do you remember it like that night? Do you remember picking up like after the Adderall? Like when you piece it together now, you're like, oh, I remember that drink.
Yes, and it was absolutely awful. And I actually remember a Christmas like this when I spent the whole entire night trying to figure out how I could get to the drink without anybody knowing.
Yeah.
Because I'm sober, right? My first year in the program, when I went home for Christmas, I was sober, right? My whole family thinks I'm sober. And I spent the whole entire trip trying to get to the bottle without anybody finding out. And then once you get to it, you have to drink as much as you can because you only have that second. And then I'm blacked out, sober.
And was your family wise to the fact that you were drinking?
I mean, they yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
for sure.
When you would go then back to meetings, would you be like, I got one day, I fucked up again last night? You would. So you were honest in meetings.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I was honest in meetings because just not drinking was sober.
Right.
So I would be doing cocaine. I'd be doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Sure.
And it wasn't until I touched the drink that I had to come clean for me. Like, that was the way my mind worked.
Yeah.
You know? So then when it got to like that half an Adderall, which then led to a drink. And then that had to happen for me to be like, oh my God, like, nothing can come in, like absolutely nothing can come in. Once anything enters this body, something mentally happens where everything's fucked. Right? There's no
Here I
way.
Go. Yeah.
Here I go. I'm off and running. And I was totally defeated. I didn't know what to do. I got a new sponsor. I started to be honest. I didn't realize how dishonest I was about everything until I started to get honest. Like, I would tell you this sweatshirt was $10 when it was $20, just because that's the way I talked.
Right. Interesting.
Right. And so I had this exercise in the beginning where it was like, every time you catch yourself in a lie, you don't have to out yourself right away, but you need to write it down.
Oh, wow.
And it was crazy. And I was like, I lie about everything. I was even lying about the things I was writing down.
Do you think that comes from like the abuse you suffered as a child? Like, just like a different reality, or no?
I don't, it's interesting because I don't really blame anything on that. I'm sure a lot of it comes from that. I don't know. I guess I don't know about the answer there because I didn't speak up about the abuse at all until my older years. So maybe that was a huge lie I'd carried for so long.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the way that I rolled. It's really hard to live your life and you lie about everything too, right? Because then you have to try to remember what you said to who about what. So it was a really miserable existence.
Yeah. No, I get that totally. I just remember it with booze, just like mostly just like trying to hide how much I'd been drinking, just like not wanting anyone to, because if they knew, they'd be so horrified,
Mm-hmm. I used to do it with drugs too. I would make so much money bartending that I would supply, I was the big shot. So I would supply the drugs for my friends. So I'd have a big bag, and then I'd have my private stash.
Right. Yeah.
So I would do with them, and then go in the bathroom and do mine as
Right.
well, and
Totally.
do with them, and then do mine. And that's how the end of my drinking went too. Is I'd carry around little airplane bottles. I used to wear these holsters.
Yeah.
With my get up back in the day. I would load those with the airplane bottles, and I would drink at the bar like a normal person, and then I'd go in the bathroom and pound those down.
And during those 2 years when you were like relapsing all the time, were you still working as a bartender?
Yes.
Right.
Yep. I was still working as a bartender even when I started to get sober. I was still working in a bar up until the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So this is how it all starts for me. This is where my whole life starts to change. I get a new sponsor, start being honest, and she says, what's your morning routine look like? And I was like, third step prayer, meditation. And she was like, really? What's the third step prayer mean to you? And I've been saying it every day for 2 years. And I was like, the third step prayer. And she was like, what is it? And I couldn't even recite it. And I was like, well, I can't do it now. And she's like, well, then just what does it mean? And I was like, I don't know, and she's like, all right, this is what I want you to do. I want you to say the third step prayer every morning until you hear every word that you're saying. Right. And then I want you to meditate. And I only want you to meditate for 1 minute. And I was like, that's so easy. I've been meditating for years. She's like, what I want you to do for this minute, she's like, and set a timer. I want you to only think, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And I was like, that's a piece of cake, Right. So the next morning I get up and I'm thinking this is going to be a 3-minute project. And I sit down and I have the third step prayer printed out in front of me, and I read it, and then I sit there a minute and I have no idea what I read. And then because it was so habit, it would be like third step prayer, check, meditation, check. So when I would sit there and I would start to say it again, I offer myself to the, and then my brain would take off. Dear God, I offer myself to thee, and my brain would take off, meaning thoughts. I would just start thinking about something else, and I'd keep having to come back and keep having to come back. And in the beginning, it would take me 20 minutes to say the third step prayer until I heard every word that I was saying. Wow. And connect to every word that I was saying. I had no idea. I offer myself to thee. I had no idea this was an offering. Right. I had no idea, help me so that I may help another. Right. I had no idea, take away my difficulty so somebody else could see that and want that. Yeah. I had no idea, thy will not mine be done. That's the biggest one. I had no idea I was asking for God to show me the way. Right. None. Zero idea for 2 years I was saying this. I had no idea that's what I was doing. Right. So now that I'm listening to every word that I say, and then I go into meditation, I set my timer and I'm like, breathe in, breathe out. That's at my brain. What are you going to have for lunch? Who are you going to call? What do you have to do? Right. And then come back, set the timer again. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Did you make your bed? Are you going to have breakfast? Right. My brain. And to realize for years, I had been meditating and just sitting down for 10 minutes, and thinking about myself. Right. Right. Where do I have to go? What do I have to do? Who do I have to call? What, Right. Meditation, check. So third step prayer, check. Meditation, check. Right. And not really doing any of those things. So once I started to sit down and just listen for that minute, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. First of all, third step prayer until you hear it took me from my head to my heart. And really focusing on thy will not mine be done. Right. Right. And really zoning in on that part, and then listening, just breathing. And this is when I'm going to get emotional. This is where my whole fucking life changes. And I didn't realize for these 2 years, what everybody had in these rooms that I didn't have was a higher power. I didn't realize that that's what was missing. I didn't realize, you hear this as a spiritual program. I didn't realize that I didn't have, I've always been a God girl. God keep me out of prison. God help me feel good. God get him away from me, asking. Right. And never really mad when I didn't get my way. I still believed in God. I had no idea what a higher power was. I had no idea that I wasn't connected to that. So in getting into my heart and then just breathing. And I like to say this, what kind of a relationship is it if somebody is always talking and never listening? And that's what meditation was for me. It was just me like that in my brain,
Yeah,
right? Blah,
yeah,
blah, 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 blah,
totally.
blah. That once I stop and just listen, it gave my higher power a chance to come in.
Right.
And everything changes in this practice, in this moment. And I got connected. I got open. I had no idea, God. I had a fear in God. I had a God, who was judging, and I have a higher power now who's on my side and who's like my homie and like my best friend.
And how quickly did you feel the presence of that higher power in your life?
Within the first month, because it was about that long that I'm saying the third step prayer for like 20 minutes.
Right.
Until I can get my mind to stop tweaking out. So it was in the first, I started with the 1 minute and I moved up to 3 minutes. I was only at 3 minutes in the first month. And I would say at the end of that first month is when I was really I could like feel it in every part of my body.
And what is your conception of this higher power? Like, if you could articulate it, how would you describe it?
Energy, life
Right.
force, everything.
So it's your connection to that.
Yeah, it's my universe connection. It's my source connection. It's my connection to everybody and everything.
And does it guide you?
So it guides me, but not in a way of like go right or go left. It guides me in a way of like allowing me to get still and silent and get really deep inside of me.
Right.
Because I know I know the answers. They're all in me. It's just how much stuff is burying them. So it really allows me to drop all that away. And like I said, like God is my best friend. So it's a he to me, and and I call it God. This is how I talk about it. But it is just a presence and an energy. But God walks with me. God walks beside me. He is the boss, but in the same sense, he never tells me what to do or which way to go. It's just my partner. It's my partner in everything that I do.
And then how has that affected your life?
So now I am really about to get sober. This is 4.5 years ago. I've been bartending for 20 plus years, 25 years I've been in this business. And I'm like, now what?
Right.
Now what? Because I don't have a passion for drinks anymore. I used to want to create them, and I don't have a passion for any of this anymore. And now I'm pretty much like, well, life is over, right? I'm never going to party again. I'm never going to dance again. I'm never going to laugh again. I'm never going to have sex again. Never, because I don't know how to do any of these things sober.
Sure.
So I'm realizing, you hear this in the rooms all the time. Keep showing up at the barbershop, you're going to get a haircut,
Right.
So, and you keep being a bartender, you're probably going to drink. So I have to tell my boss, I can't bartend anymore. So he puts me back on the floor serving, which I thought was going to be the worst thing ever, which turns out being of service was actually amazing. We're exactly where I needed to be in my beginning of recovery. That's right.
Wild. Yeah.
Duh. And it changed the way I served. I was no longer an order taker. Like, I hate you. It was like, how can I create this experience for you?
Right.
Which changed everything. And then I went to my Burning Man crew, and I was going to be, and I was like, on my way there in my head, I'm like, I can't be a part of this anymore. I can't be a part of this team anymore. I can't do it. And I have another God shot experience where I'm sitting there in the car and the sun's beaming on me, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. And I just take a couple breaths and I open my heart and I hear, you don't have to quit doing what you love because you're sober.
Right.
You have to start implementing your sobriety into what you love.
Right.
And I was like, wow. So I ended up going to this meeting and telling them, because we threw festivals. And I was like, I want to do a sanctuary. I want to build sanctuaries at our festivals, healing sanctuaries, yoga and meditation. And I was able to do that. And it was incredible. It was a beautiful experience. And I got to do this offering.
You did that at Burning Man, or?
I did that at our festival is called Boogaloo.
Oh,
It
right.
was like a much smaller
Right.
version of Burning Man. Yeah. So
Where
at
does
Boogaloo.
Boogaloo happen?
It's in California. It kind of
Right.
moved places.
Right.
Every year it had a different location. Like Mount Elsinore was the first year, and then it kind of moved around.
Right.
But it was a beautiful eye opener for me to realize you don't have to stop doing all of these things, right? Like you can still live, you can still have a fun life. You just need to figure out how to bring sobriety into it.
And was there like a sober, like, did you find a sober community within that Boogaloo community?
For a minute, but it you know, I grow, right? I grow. So I kind of grow out of that. And this is another God shot. This is one that changes my life for where it is today. My brother was going to Jamaica and volunteering at a kids camp.
Mm-hmm.
And he had went the year before. He came back. He was a changed man. And I was like, I want to go. Like, what is this? You know? And he's like, come. I'm like, Jamaica? I don't know. There's a lot of weed there.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, totally.
And he's like, you're at a kids camp. Like, we're hanging out with kids. You can do it. So I go, and these kids are amazing. They're so brilliant. And there's one afternoon that I'm like they're all at lunch, and I'm sitting in the playground and I'm meditating.
Right.
And this little girl comes running up to me, and her name's Paris Francis. And she was the wildest of all the kids. She comes running up to me, and she's like, what are you doing? Meditating? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I want to do it. And I was like, all right. And she plops down, and she puts her little hands in her little mudra.
Right.
She closes her eyes, and I'm just watching her, and she opens her eyes, and she goes, well, tell me what to do.
Right.
And I was like, okay. So I do a little guiding. I do a little guided meditation for her. And I watched this little 7-year-old have this experience. I like watched her in this like wildy energy come over, and it was like a 5-minute guided meditation. I watched her like find her connection. I call it dropping in.
Yeah, sure.
And then we got done, and she was like, that was awesome. And she was like, hi.
Right, totally.
And she was like, I want to do that again. And at the time, I wasn't even allowed to say the word meditation. Like they're very religious in Jamaica. Right. They're very, it was not allowed. Like it was not, I wasn't allowed to do it. And so the woman of the camp, she was for it, but the parish wasn't. And she was like, well, we'll just start to call it quiet time. Like maybe we can just do some quiet, you can just teach them some breathing.
Right.
And again, it was like a thing like that, where if it wasn't that moment, that kid, that second, that hadn't happened, but it was in that moment that I realized this is what I want to do with my life.
Wow.
I want to teach kids how to meditate. Yeah. So now I'm like, how do I do this? Where do I go from here?
Right.
So I come back home from Jamaica, which, by the way, I've gone back to Jamaica 4 years now. And not only am I allowed to teach meditation, they asked me to stay an extra week last year and teach some of the adults because they're watching they're watching the growth in the kids. So I come back and I'm like, now what? And this was a time when our man of power, there was a lot of school shootings happening, like one after the other, after the other, after the other.
Yeah.
And the man of power was like, let's arm our teachers.
Wow. And
I kind of had a breakdown, and I was like, let's not arm our teachers. Let's arm our students with the tools they need to deal with their emotions.
Yeah.
And it was right after the Stoneman Douglas shooting, where the kid was a former student. And he said shooting guns was his therapy.
Right.
And the solution to that was to arm our teachers.
Right. Crazy.
And I was like, no, like we can't. Like, so I made this big post on Facebook and was like, who wants to join me and try to figure this thing out? And I had a couple girls come, and we developed a business. And I'm actually wearing the sweatshirt right now, which is called Worthy Beyond Purpose. It's a nonprofit.
Amazing.
And we spent a year just doing all kinds of volunteer work, all through like Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCA, a place called Home, and developing a curriculum and watching this thing blossom. And then we became a 501c3, and we started to get into schools and everything, and I'm still working at the restaurant full time because that's what's actually paying the bills. And then I'm doing this on the side because this is what fills my heart, my soul. And then pandemic, right? Then coronavirus hits in March.
Sure.
Which my restaurant closed, or my restaurant, well, everything closes for a while. It's still open now, but everything closes. Everybody's at home. So Worthy Beyond Purpose jumps online immediately.
Right.
And our classes are packed because it's even before schools are online.
Right.
And we got to be with kids in the beginning of this pandemic of like panic attack and fear. And there's a virus and we're wearing masks and we don't know what's going on, and so fearful. And I'm fearful. So we got to go through this together. Like we all went through this together. Amazing. And we got to get to a place of, after like a month, the kids turn into like, how can I teach this to my mom? How can I help my little brother? How can I, and it was that moment that I realized that I will never go back to the restaurant, because there's no going back from this point on. It's only forward. We only go forward from here. And this isn't going to be any more of a plug for my business, but I say all this because 5 years ago, I was going to die. I was losing teeth. I wasn't processing food, and I didn't care. And I didn't even learn how to meditate. I didn't even learn about my higher power. I didn't even learn about becoming whole and full, and how everything, like I learned it all from this program. I learned it all from these steps. So when I came in here, this person, and I started to get clean, and now I'm like empty, it all built from there. Like my whole life started at 40. And it's just like, how does that happen? Like it's crazy. And I just want to do a little breakdown of the steps of what they mean to me. Is step 1, 2, and 3 is I can't, he can, so let him. I can't manage my life. God can manage my life, so let God manage my life.
Right.
4 and 5. 4 is when you write down everything that you've ever done in your life. And I have a lot of people who are scared to write this stuff down, but it's like, write it down. Once you write it down, it's no longer in you. Right. Don't let that stuff stay in you. Put it down, put it on paper so you don't have to carry that anymore.
Right. And
then you share it with somebody else. And when you share it, it's no longer a part of your story. Like you've gotten it out and you've gotten rid of it.
Yeah.
6 and 7 is our character defects. We had to behave and act a certain way because we are in this life that we were given. Right. We didn't choose to live this way. We didn't choose to be raised this way. We didn't choose this. We had to act a certain way because we were in this life. We are no longer in that life anymore. So we don't have to act that way anymore. So get rid of those and then ask for what you want to be, what you want in place, like gratitude, compassion, love, and kindness, instead of manipulating. I have a quick wit and I can be really, anything like that. Sure. Like get rid of that stuff and bring in compassion. 8 and 9. 8 is not I'm sorry. Amends is not I'm sorry. If you do some shit and you put an I'm sorry on it, that shit is still there. Uh-huh. 8 is making up for it. If you do some shit and then how can I make it up to you? What can I do for you? That becomes full circle, and that is no longer a part of your story. It is no longer gets to hold you down anymore. It is no longer, it's not who you are, it's who you were. And in that amends process, it's no longer a part of your story. And then 10 is your maintenance, your daily maintenance. And now 11, you have a clean slate. You just cleaned up all of that garbage. Get God on your side. Get God on your side. This is where I become great homies with God. I have a clean slate and my best friend is God. What do you want to create? Who do you want to be? Do it. You got a clean slate. You can do whatever you want to do. You can be whoever you want to be. And then give back, give it away. Give it away. Yeah. This simple program, I cannot believe, has 100 million % not changed my life, but given me a life beyond my dreams, beyond my wildest dreams.
It's true.
My wildest dreams have wildly changed from what they used to be, but this is beyond. This was not even a glimpse, a mimmer of a thought 5 years ago. This is what I get to be today.
I agree with that completely. In that, like, the life I have now is not what I planned. It's better. It's better.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. It's amazing to hear that and to see you. I mean, the audience can't see you, but you have this radiance about you that's very compelling. I can see how, and that we're on a Zoom call, and I can feel that talking to you. Like I would love to go to one of your meditation sessions. Like, how do I check it out?
Well, this is great. I do want to tell you one story too, but yes.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Okay. We'll come back to the meditation.
Yeah. We'll do it at the end.
So this is one of my favorite. I have so many stories about God speaking to me and just being amazing in my life, but this is my favorite. Last year, I got invited to go to Tanzania on a meditation retreat.
Right.
Amazing. I have no idea how that happened. I have no idea. I just said yes. Yes. You know, like everything in my body was like, you can't afford it. You can't do it. You can't blah, blah, blah. And I just said yes. Like this is what you're going to do. So while I'm in Tanzania on this meditation retreat, I also got to teach a third grade school, third graders some breathing techniques with an interpreter because they all speak Swahili.
Right.
How does that get to happen? Right. Because I have God. Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, so I'm on safari, as you are.
Right.
And, we are driving in our Jeep in safari, and we camp in Serengeti. We're like glamping in the Serengeti, and we're all out doing the thing. And then the group that I'm with, somebody says that they're all going to do San Pedro, which San Pedro is a plant medicine. Right. I've had my experience with plant medicines in the beginning where I was like, I'm sober, I'm just doing this plant medicine, which no, that doesn't work. For me. Works for you. But so San Pedro was there, and they were all going to do San Pedro. And this girl was like, do you want to do it? And I was like, I don't know, I have to talk to God, I'll let you know tomorrow. I have to, find out from my higher power what he thinks. And she's like, all right, cool. So everybody goes to bed. I'm still kind of out by the fire a little bit later. They lock you in your tents there because you're in the middle of the Serengeti. But I'm out a little later than everybody else because I'm that defiant one that's out a little bit later. I sneak into my tent and I get ready for bed, and I'm doing my prayers. And I'm like, hey, God, thank you for this life. Everything's amazing. San Pedro's here. It's not a drug. It's a plant medicine. I think it'll make me get more connected to you. It's a spiritual medicine. I just want to get more connected to you. I'm in the Serengeti in Tanzania on this meditation retreat. I'll never have I'm bartering, right? Telling God all the reasons you should tell me yes.
Yeah.
So I'm doing it for you. I want to do it for you, God, right? What do you think? And then it was like, oh, by the way, I'd love to meditate with some zebra. Zebra's my spirit animal. We saw tons of zebras when we were there. So I kind of ended it with that. I'd like to meditate with some zebra. Peace. I go to sleep. A couple hours later, I hear some rumbling around. I open my eyes, and the girl I'm tenting with I was like, what's going on? And she's like, listen. And we listen, and there's a bunch of farting going on around the tent, big farting. And I was like, what the hell? She jumps up and she goes to unzip, and it's, open. And she looks at me and she's like, why are we not locked in here?
Right.
And I was like, because I came in a little late. And she pokes her head out and she comes back in and she's like, what the fuck, Connie? And I was like, what? And she's like, did you call them? So I've been telling everybody the whole time, zebra. And she's like, did you call them? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, did you call them? And I was like, zebra. And she's like, the fucking zebra. And I was like, I did. And so we both are peeking. We're surrounded by zebra.
Wow.
I have photos of this. We're surrounded by zebra. And I'm like, I have to go out there. And she's like, you can't go out there.
Right.
And I'm like, I have to. I called them. I have to go out there.
Yeah.
So she's like, just don't get eaten. And I go out there and I'm sitting on this little porch and I have my phone. I'm trying to take pictures. I can't use a flash because I don't want to scare anybody. Right. And then I put my phone down and I just put my hands on my knees and I just start breathing. And their energy with me is unlike anything. And I'm just bawling. And this is an amazing feeling. And I hear this sound like there's a man right behind me. And says, you will never have to put anything in your body to get more close to me. I will give you whatever it is you want in this world. You're in a meditation retreat in the Serengeti. There is no more, right? There is no more. Stop asking for more. Addict. You want zebra? Here's your fucking zebra. And it was like, because that's how God talks to me. That's how I talk to him. And it was very much like, you will never have to put anything in your body again.
I'll
wild. Give you any experience you want. You can have without putting anything in there.
It's funny because sometimes my ambitions come up against my whatever limitations of whether it's my own talent or my luck or the business I'm in. And I'm like, oh, this is God saying, Nick, you have enough. What more do you want? Really? Do you want more? Like I gave you everything. Why is that not enough? It's so funny. But I never really hear God speak to me. Like I look back, and I've said this before on this podcast, but that like, oh, it worked out in a way I never would have planned, like I had no control over that, and look where I am, and it's amazing. And who knew? Like I had nothing to do with this. And I find that beautiful and relieving. But when God does speak to me, he says shit that's so crazy that I'm like, whoa, really? You want that? I don't think I can do that. Like I should, sell all of my worldly possessions and go minister to the poor. Like that's the message I get. And I'm like, oh fuck, I can't. I'm like, okay, like maybe next year, like, right. like service in its purest form is, Christ-like, and like how like I don't feel I'm just like, it just seems crazy to me, but that's what I hear anyway. And I think you're the first guest I've had on that like gets messages from God. I'm not saying that like you're a in any sort of mystical way, but like it does seem like it's more concrete to you than it is to me, whereas I just seem to crawl around in the dark, and then every now and then I find myself in some decent place and I'm like, oh wow, thanks.
There's been 3 experiences when it's been very clear. There's been a billion times where I'm like, what should I do? And there's not, like I said, there's not a go right or go left. It's just to be quiet.
Right.
But there's been 3 situations where it's been very, and it's all been around drugs. It's all been around me questioning, like maybe it wasn't so bad, or maybe, and it's like this thing of like, I have you now, like you're with me now. Right. Like you're in my gang now, like you don't do that anymore.
Yeah. And I guess like when you talk about meditation and this sort of communing with the energy of the world, I mean, I have felt in times of distress when I've stopped and just focused on my breathing and connected with that sort of universal energy that I'm a part of, that nothing can happen. Nothing can happen because, nothing bad. Bad things happen, but like that I'll be fine with whatever those things are because I am one with the universe. That's to hear those words come out of my mouth sounds crazy, but that's the truth. So there you guys have it.
We talk about that. It's crazy for me. It was 5 years ago. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to think where my life is today. And for me to say like, God's my best friend, like that's not, those aren't my words.
Right. Totally.
But meditation. So every morning I do a 20-minute meditation, and I talk to a lot of people who, I'll meditate when I can, or, and I'm like, I definitely understand meditating when you're stressed out, when you need something, or what, when you need a relief, but try and meditate when you don't need anything.
Right.
Try and just get quiet and try and like open your heart when there's no agenda, when it's just to listen.
Right.
That's where the connection gets real. And like I said,
Right.
if you're always talking, or if there's always a need, God's not going to so much. I mean, it's still going to be there because it's God and He's everywhere. But try and just be available,
Right.
and open. And like for me, anyway, this is how it's worked for me. This is where the connection got to be like my best friend.
Yeah.
You know, like we're just taking it together. Like I don't need a message. I'm just sitting here with you.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's where it got.
And when you meditate, do you have a form of meditation, or is it about your breath, or is it about like?
So I do classes every week, and I try to bring different kinds of meditations to them because I like to teach many tools. I have many, many tools in the toolbox. But for my own personal, for the morning, it's 20 minutes of silence.
Right.
And it's the third step prayer until I hear every word that I'm saying. Sometimes now it's like 3 times instead of 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I really drop into that. And then I think I'll say inside my head, good morning, God, I am here. Good morning, God, I am here. And I'll keep saying it until I can feel it.
Right.
And then I can just breathe and just let go.
Right.
So it takes a while for me to get out of my head into my heart. And then the good morning, God, I'm here is kind of like my connection, my rooting. And then I'm just, which there's still a lot of blah, 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 blah that goes on up here. It's not,
sure,
like a second of bliss, but that's the habit.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, cool. I mean, I'm curious about the other 2 times God spoke to you.
I could tell them to you.
I mean, I'd be crazy not to ask.
So one time it's another like drug thing that I was thinking about taking. It's called Toad. There's a thing called Toad medicine. And I had a friend who was doing it, and she was kind of talking me into it. And again, it's spiritual. It's not a drug.
Right, sure.
You don't take it to lose your mind. You take it to get, really inside. And I was thinking about it. And then I went and did a breath work. Have you ever done breath work?
I did one of those things where you do a lot of like,
yeah.
And you sort of get all of the oxygen kind of out, or I don't know exactly how it works, but then you sort of trip balls for, 45 seconds.
Yeah, it was something like that.
It's great.
So I was laying down in a breath work, and I was getting into that space, and I had the intention of like, hey, God, I'm thinking about doing Toad medicine. What do you think? And I was getting in that place, and then I was letting go to where I was about to trip balls. And when I let go, the song that was playing said, so in my ask too was like, I really miss the ritual of drugs. I really miss my ritual of it. So I want to do this. And so the song that came on said, you are everything. You are full. Life is the ritual.
Whoa.
You are free.
Wow.
You are everything. And I kept hearing it over and over and over again. It was a song that was playing, right? And I just started bawling. And I was especially like, life is the ritual. Right. You are free. And I'm bawling. And then afterwards I go and talk to the teacher, and I'm like, hey, what is that song that you played? And I told her that, and she goes, I didn't play that song. And I was like, let me see your playlist. And she shows me her playlist. And I was like, it reminds me of that guy we were just talking about. And I was like, let me see your playlist. And I look, and she's like, there's no song like that on there. And I was like, what the hell?
That's wild.
I went and shared about it at the meeting the next day. And I'm like, I literally was like, I missed the ritual of drugs. And I got the message of life is the ritual, and you are free.
So
I don't have to take a drug to get this ritual, right? Like, just live your life. Just do your life. You're free today.
That's wild.
That's wild. And one more, I'll try to make this one quick. In the beginning of my meditation practice, when it just started to really affect my life and change my life, and I knew I wanted to teach meditation. This is before I even knew I wanted to teach it to kids. I was like, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? I had a friend in the police department, and he was like, why don't you teach it to LAPD?
Right.
And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's try to make this work. So he gets me a meeting with the chief of LAPD. This was like 4 years ago. I'm pretty brand new to sobriety. I've got a couple months. And the headquarters, downtown Los Angeles, like shoot for the stars, right?
Right.
He's like, he's going to meet with you. He's interested in doing it. And I'm like, I'm a felon. I'm going to go and teach LAPD how to meditate. Like, what is happening right now? So he makes me an appointment, and I'm sitting in the car getting ready to go in, and I'm freaking the fuck out. And I'm like shaking and I'm sweating. And I'm like, I can't go in there. I'm just going to tell everybody I went, and it didn't work out.
Right.
I'm going to tell everybody I did it, and they didn't like
Right.
me, and I'm not going to do it. And I'm freaking out. And then it was like, oh, what do I do? And I was like, why don't you just meditate? Like, this is pretty much what you do. So I do a little meditation, calling in God, and I have this conversation, and I'm like, hey, God, I know how to do the meditation part, but I don't know how to do this part. I don't know how to do this interview. I don't know how to talk to this guy, the chief of police. I just need your help. Like, I need you to help me with this. I'll do the meditation, but I need help with this. Meditation ends. I get up. I walk inside. I'm sitting there waiting, kind of terrified. He calls me in. I walk inside, and I literally have an out-of-body experience where I watch myself sit down in a chair. And like the first words out of my mouth was like, be the change you want to see in the world. Meditation is the change that we can make in this whole world. And then I just like spoke for like a few minutes, and then I watched myself, and then I joined my body and entered the conversation. And I was like, thank you. That was the intro I needed.
Wow, that's amazing.
Totally amazing.
How cool.
Yeah, I didn't end up going through with that one. I didn't end up getting that gig, but
sure.
that was another really great. I got you.
Yeah.
God's like, I got you. God's always like, I got you.
Totally. Well, Connie, this has been so great. It's been really great meeting you and getting a sense of, your vibe and what you're up to, and hearing your story. And how can we meditate with you? Where do we go?
So every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I do a Zoom. It's donation-based meditation. Right. You can find me on Facebook. Every Tuesday night, I post a link and a little thing about it, whatever it's going to be on, which is Connie Clotworthy.
Uh-huh.
And we also do events for my nonprofit. We actually have them coming up next Saturday. I don't know when you're going to post this. It'll probably be after, but you can check out worthybeyondpurpose.com and look for any kind of events we do, which are like meditation-based events as well.
Cool. All right. Well,
yeah.
Thanks for coming on. It's so great to meet you. I'll definitely, you'll see me in your Zoom.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/thedrunkalogs.